Hello everyone and welcome to SEW-EURODRIVE's How-To series. We're going to be discussing how to maintain and take care of your product. So let's get into it. In today's episode of How-To, we're going to discuss how to adjust the air gap in one of SEW-EURODRIVE's mechanical brakes. You may wonder, what is a mechanical brake? How does it work? And what is an air gap? Well, we're going to try to break it down as simply as possible. The SEW-EURODRIVE mechanical brake uses a magnetic coil in order to release the brake in order for the motor to spin freely. It works very similarly to how your braking system on your car works, except for a little bit different. You're not clamping onto the rotor is clamping on to the brake pads. And we're going to see that in detail in just a moment. But why do you need to adjust the air gap? Well, just like your car brakes can wear out over time, after many cycles with an SEW-EURODRIVE brake motor, the brake can start to wear. The cool thing about our brakes is that it is designed to be adjusted so you don't have to replace components every time the air gap gets out of tolerance. You can actually bring that air gap into tolerance by making a few slight adjustments, and that's what we're going to show you how to do today. Before we get started with actually adjusting the air gap, let's talk about some safety reminders. First and foremost, always make sure that you've de-energized the power from this motor and brake. Also, follow all of your local safety initiatives at your facility and make sure you follow your lockout tagout so that there's no possibility for anything to go wrong or to start up accidentally when it comes to this brake motor. The other thing that we want to speak to is it's important that you wear your proper PPE in order to keep yourself and others safe when you're making this type of adjustment on our SEW-EURODRIVE brake motor. To start, we're going to remove the fan guard. To do that, we need to remove the 4 bolts that hold the fan guard in place, and to do that, you'll use a nut driver of the metric size. There are different sizes of metric fasteners that SEW-EURODRIVE utilizes. It's important that you follow our technical specifications and operating instructions to know exactly which sizes you have and what tools you will need. Now, because we know that this is a maintenance item and it's something that happens regularly, we want to try to reduce our downtime. We know downtime can be very expensive. That's why we're actually leaving these bolts in place so we can just slide the fan guard right off and we can get to the brake. And you can see here, this is the SEW brake. The next step is we need to be able to access the actual brake components area where we can analyze where the air gap is now. To do that, there's a protective belly band that is around the brake. This prevents dust and contamination from getting into the moving components. We need to remove that first. The best way to do that is to take a flat-headed screwdriver and then you're just going to peel away a little bit of the rubber band. You'll get your screwdriver in there and you work it up so that you can slide it up out of the way. Now that we've removed the belly band out of the way, one of the things that's going to happen as a brake wears is you're going to have some accumulation of dust. It's important that you use either compressed air or something that's a non-greasing cleaner so that way you can get all of the dust out of there or any other contamination. Once you've performed that, then it's time for us to check the air gap. Now, the air gap is something that we measure in metric dimensions. The tolerances that we use are metric. That's important to bring up because some people may grab a feeler gauge out of their toolbox and it's an inch one. And the values that you see in our operating instructions may look like tenths or hundredths of an inch, and they're actually tenths of a millimeter, and there's a big difference between those two. So again, for emphasis, you always want to use a metric feeler gauge when checking your air gap. So to do that, we're going to start with the maximum air gap value that is allowed for this particular brake. Looking at the instructions and looking at this particular brake, which is stamped a BE1, and that's something you can find on all SEW-EURODRIVE brakes. The size is stamped into the brake coil. BE1 would tell us, looking at the operating instructions, that the value is 0.25 to 0.6 millimeters. So I've got 0.6 millimeters on my feeler gauge. I'm going to check at 3 different points, and I'm going to go as close as I can to where the adjustment screws are. So let's go ahead and see what we have here. As I stick my feeler gauge in there, it's really loose. That tells me this air gap is way out of tolerance. Now, you may be concerned, what could happen if my air gap gets out of tolerance? Well, it just means that your brake's not going to work. That means that it is going to work. No, I didn't tongue twist it there. It just means that you can't release the brake. And so in order for this to be able to spin freely, you have to have the right air gap so the coil can work properly to lift the stationary disc out of the way. So now that I know I have a problem here, let's go ahead and spin it around and see if it's the same everywhere. Actually feels about the same everywhere. So I've got even wear, which is good, but I also have the problem of I need to adjust this down a little bit more. So we know we have the problem of too much air gap. How do we fix that? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to adjust it down to the minimum air gap value. So how we do that is we're going to set our feeler gauge to the minimum, which I mentioned earlier is 0.25 millimeters. So I'm going to go ahead and find 0.25 on my feeler gauge. And now that I have 0.25 on my feeler gauge, I like to put my feeler gauge down here, and this is going to go between the stationary disc and the dampening plate. I'm going to slide it in there like so, and then I'm going to take my wrench, and there's 3 adjustment screws on this brake, and I'm going to go ahead and bring this down and tighten it until I feel the feeler gauge start to grab. And I'm feeling a little bit of tension there. Okay, so it's grabbing a little bit. Let's go ahead and do the other 2 nuts as well. Okay, so now we've adjusted it to 0.25. What I like to do is let's go back to that first one and let's just check it again, because sometimes things even out. It still feels about the same, so we know we've got a good adjustment. There you have it. It's just as simple as that. You have everything set with the air gap. It's time to reassemble the brake. I like to just give it a quick visual look around to make sure that everything looks just so. Everything looks even. We've checked it and we've rechecked it with the feeler gauge, so let's go ahead and put this brake back together. So the first thing we're going to do for the reassembly process is to slide the belly band back down into place. I like to do it by hand, and then once you get it down to where it should be, you might want to take a screwdriver and just kind of flip the belly band out so that it's exactly where it needs to be. And I'm going to give it a look around to make sure that belly band is in place, because you want to make sure that, again, nothing can get into the brake assembly. So that's what that belly band serves its purpose as. We've got the belly band back in place. Now we're going to put our fan guard back on. And then we're going to tighten our 4 screws. So now we have our motor all set up. The brake is good to go. Everything's in tolerance. And we're ready for this brake motor to run many, many, many more cycles. So that wraps up how to adjust the air gap on one of our SEW-EURODRIVE brakes. It's important is with anything that has electricity that you follow all of the specifications for starting everything back up, re-energizing it, and I just say look everything over again before you hit the start button. In addition to that, we want to let you know that what you saw today was a basic overview of one of our brakes. We have a lot of brakes, and while they all in principle operate the same way, it's so important that you look at our technical specifications and operating instructions in order to ensure that you are setting everything according to that type of brake. If you're interested in learning more about SEW-EURODRIVE's components, products, or solutions, please go to SEW-EURODRIVE.com. Together, we drive the world.